Welcome to day number 2 in Rose-Hulman's CSSE 490 Android development course. Today what we're going to do is we're going to have people follow along. So the way I prefer to teach a course is to not so much lecture as to do demos and then to kind of cover topics as we need them. But it's kind of it's an application driven approach to doing these things. So what I wanted to get started doing was just to do a little bit of work with buttons and text views so that we could play with using the XML resources. The big thing we're going to do today is laying out an Android application. So this one's called the Hello Button Project. If you go to the main course website, which will eventually be Android, Rose-Hulman/Android, there's a link to the slides. I recommend that you follow along with the slides. It's just an easy way to kind of see what's going on if you get behind. There's also a download on here where you can download an icon that we're going to use later. That's optional. But you can always get access to the slides there. And here's the full extension, the Google Doc path. So let's go ahead and get started. The app that we're going to make is going to look like this. It's going to have a single text field and a single button. They're going to be centered in the view. When you press the button, it's just going to change the name to say you've pressed the button, and then each time you press it, it's going to go up. So here you can see I've hit it 42 times. The goal of this example is to get some practice with making a new project, making resources, string resources, color resources, and then the thing we're going to spend most of our time with is editing that main.xml layout file. We're going to get you set up with your outline and properties view windows so that you can do some of this work. A little bit more with linear layouts. And then we will write a little bit of Java code. We're going to make a click listener and change a couple properties programmatically. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and have you make a new project. The project name, we're going to make all of the names you type in slightly different, just so you can see how each one is used. So the project name is going to be Hello Button. The build target can be whatever you'd like. I'm going to use Android 1.5 because the device I've got is an Android 1.5 device. And also I just want to prove that you can run it on pretty much any Android device. We're not doing anything new here, right? You don't need 2.2 yet. The application name I'm just going to make different, so I was going to call it Simple Button. The application name is what the user will see, so that'll be what's written beneath the app. That'll be what's written in the title bar by default. So this is very important for the user. It's the only one they care about. The package name, I just did the reverse DNS of Rose-Hulman, called it Hello Button. Then the activity, so the activity, this is actually going to be the only activity in this application. I'm going to call it main Hello Button. That's going to be the name of the Java file. But that your user won't care about that. Your user only really cares about the application name. The minimum SDK needed on a device to run this is 3, and that matches with the SDK that I'm using as well. So let me go ahead and do these things. So I'm going to say File, New. If when you did the install you may have Android project here, if you do, feel free to click on it. If you don't, you can always say Project. And then select out of the Android folder Android project from here. The name that we're going to give it is Hello Button. You can see that I actually have already done this. I did it in class, so I'm going to have to make mine video. You can just make yours Hello Button. I'm going to go ahead and make it's going to be a new project. I'm going to choose to use Android 1.5. My application name is Simple Button. My package is the reverse DNS of the school's website, so edu.rosehulman. And then I'm just going to say Hello Button. I choose to make mine all lowercase. That's just a style preference. You can put uppercases in there. The activity that we're going to create, this will also be the name of the Java class file that we're going to be editing. There's only going to be one activity in our application. An activity is like a screen, a user interface screen that you're going to work with. It's just going to be called main Hello Button, and my version is 3. So I do that. You can see that it makes the new project. You may have noticed there was a red X up there for like just a moment. And what that's all about is that's there's kind of a race going on between how fast does the system generate that r.java file. That's that automatically generated file of pointers to your resources. We mentioned that briefly on day one, but I'll just mention it again here. All of your resources have a pointer to them, and that's kept in r.java. You don't have to modify it, but this is how the system works behind the scenes. And it's a race of, will it do the auto compile first, or will it generate this file first? Usually you'll get a warning for like half a second, but then it should go away. If it doesn't go away, usually what'll fix it is if it continues to stay there, you can just do a clean on your project. That should make it go away. So I'm just going to clean the project. If you'd had the trouble, that should have fixed it. If it didn't, there's a couple things you could try. The easiest thing to try is just make a new project and see if it happens again. All right, so we're going to start making some modifications here. You can see that we've got the Java file that all it does is it sets its content view to be whatever's in r.layout.main. If we go look at r.layout.main, that's actually this file right here, layout folder main.xml. It's just adding this to the screen. You can view this in a couple of ways. You can view the actual code for it, or you can click on this layout tab, and you can see what it looks like here. The emulator that I'm using is actually a 3.2, and it doesn't matter if you pick slider or not for the view here. And today I'm mainly just worried about the portrait view. Landscape is going to look okay for us in the end. So it says this is what I think that this layout's going to look like. And if you remember, or actually if you run it in the emulator, I haven't run it yet, this is what it should look like. And for simple things, the layout view here works very well. I'm told for more complex things it ceases to work very well, but for what we're doing, we're gonna try to make use of it. So you can see that you get Hello World for free. It goes ahead and says, you know, a little message in here. One of the things that we did is we gave things different names, and I just wanted to say the project, you can see where it's at, and it's not visible to the user. The activity was hello main button. That's the name of the Java class. Also, if you go into the manifest file, the activity is called main hello button. And also the activity is used for what this hello world message does. So it says hello world, and then it says the name of the activity, whereas the application name is in the title bar. And it would also be below the icon. So if I was to hit the home button, I was to find my simple button here. So that's what it says below the icon. And so that's where these different things get used. Obviously the build SDK is displayed here. So let's go ahead and let's do a couple other things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start preparing our resources. So what we're going to do to prepare resources is we have a strings.xml that's already started for us. It's got the XML version number, a resources tag, and then strings in it. To be honest, we could stick colors right in here, but that wouldn't be organized very well. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file called colors.xml. I'm just going to right click on values, and I'm going to say new. You can say new file, and you can just start it up yourself, or you can say new Android XML file. I guess we can use the Android XML file. And we're going to call this file colors.xml. And so it's just going to be for values, and I'm just going to say finished. If we use, their special thing, Really the only thing it does for us is it gives us this opening line and it gives us these resources tags. So I guess you can use it, and it may as well. What colors.xml is going to contain is it's going to contain color resources. So I'm going to say add. And I'm going to add a color resource. So you could do strings, dimensions, other things. I just want a color. The main reason I like to use their little GUI environment is because it gives you a little description here of what a color is. You can specify colors a number of ways. The easiest is just to do the pound symbol because it's going to be in hexadecimal, RGB. Today I'm going to go ahead and use the most robust, the 2 byte for alpha, 2 byte for R, 2 byte for G, 2 byte for B. I'm going to make a background color. My background color here, I'm going to choose to make it, so you can see R is 0, G is AA, so it's quite a bit of green, so it's going to be a green color, and it's fully opaque. So I'm going to say pound, fully opaque, no red, quite a bit of green, and then no blue. And then once I hit Control S, it should pop up over in my list. If I want to add another one, I'm going to make another color called text color. And this one I'm just going to make black. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And I hit save, and you can see it goes over as well. You can also see that the code gets generated for this. I did a Command AI to do the auto indent. And so now we've got resources that reference a green color and black. Cool. So creating resources, especially strings and colors, is very straightforward. You can do it, you can type in the code, or you can use Eclipse's little GUI helper. So hopefully you were able to get those things done while I was talking. Let's go ahead and make a couple changes to main.xml. What we want to do is we want the text to be centered, and we want to use our colors appropriately. So let's go and play around with main.xml. So I personally kind of like the graphical user interface. I definitely think it's important that you're able to edit the code directly, but for getting started, I think we'll start off with the layout today. In order to make the best use of the layout tab, you've got to set up your environment appropriately. The system that I like to use is I like to see these two windows. So the layout view is helpful, as is the properties view. Let me just close them down here, and I'll bring them up from scratch. The way you get these views into Eclipse to where they show up good is you say Window, Show View, an outline should be right here, easy. So when you add the outline, so when you add the outline, it should pop up. Alright, I closed the main XML, and then I opened the outline, and then it's happy. I guess it wasn't happy to get opened while main.xml was open. Quick fix though. So my outline popped up over here. Yours probably popped up down here. But the nice thing about Eclipse is you can just drag windows around and you can just put them wherever you like. Once the outline pops up, what you do is you can just right click on something and say Properties, and that'll bring up the Properties window. Mine remembered where I like to have it, but you can drag yours around and you can just move your cursor until it pops up in the right place. Some of the students preferred top bottom, other people preferred left right. Doesn't matter to me. So whatever you like. Cool. So the outline is a good way to show you all of the objects that you're creating. So we've got a linear layout and a text view. And then the properties is a good way to see what are the properties of these objects. So the task that I wanted to start with is I wanted to make this use our green background, and I wanted our text color to use our text color background, and then we're going to center this text, at least center it horizontally. Cool, so the linear layout, you can see it's got a property called background. If I click on this value area for the background, it shows these 3 dots. If I click on this little 3-dot button, I can change the color to be the background. And as soon as I say OK, it should turn green. Cool. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to set the text color to be black. Note that here we're not setting the background to be black. If I set the background to be black, it would turn this whole rectangle black. That's not what I want. What I want is I want to set the text color. So I click on the values here, my 3 little dots. I set its color to be black, which is text color. Great. And so now that shows up and you can see it just fine. So that's 2 of the steps down. I got the colors working. Now I want this thing to be centered. There are 2 ways that we could center it. So first, what I want to point out is if you click on these things, you can see the rectangle that's defined by that object. All views define a rectangular space. You can see the linear layout is taking up the whole screen. And it's taken up the whole screen because its layout height is set to fill parent, as is its width is set to fill parent. If I click on the text view, you can see that it takes up the whole space because it has a fill parent property set. So there are 2 ways that you can center this up. One way is you can center up the content inside the text view, so you could center that up. The other thing you could do is you could wrap the text field to its content and then center the text field in its parent, which these 2 approaches are different. Let's show you both of them. The first one we're going to do is we're going to let it take up the whole space and we're going to center the text inside of it. This is done with gravity. So there's a property called gravity. If I set the gravity to be center, then it'll center up its content. The property gravity works with only one view, right? It's just like the content inside this view, it only works with one view. The other way we could have done it, I'm going to undo that. The other way we could have done it is we could have used the layout gravity field. Layout gravity, what it does is it'll center this view inside its parent. So layout gravity uses 2 views. However, if it's taking up the whole space and we say center it, then there's really nothing to center because you can see the view takes up the whole space. So if we want to use this approach, we're going to have to wrap the view to its content. So I change it to wrap content, and as soon as I hit enter, this red box will change. So you can see the red box changed. Now we can center this red box inside its parent with layout gravity center. So you can see that either approach works. I don't really care which one you use. In class, I used the approach where I did fill parent and then I used gravity. I think I kind of like that approach better, but either should work. So now we've got the colors right and we've got it centered, so we fulfilled the first task. If you'd like, you can always run it as we're going along, right? So it should show up with the new colors and it should show up centered, and it looks like it does. Let's do some more tasks. The next thing we're going to do, there's still some more editing of this main.xml to go, but we're going to add some string resources. Before we start typing them, we'll do a little bit of background knowledge. So this is kind of how the lecture works. You get things as you need them. I would say that most people know the basic form of doing a string resource. If you saw it in the opening day, it's pretty straightforward. You can see a few examples that they did for you. The thing that's slightly different is what do you do if you want to do a formatted print string. So a formatted print string is typically you write % like S or %D or something like that. The recommendation with a resource, and this is important for localization, is that you also add this $1 or a $2, and then the next one would be a $3. And the reason you do this is because you can specify which argument you want to put in here. So put the first argument here, second argument here, so on and so forth. And this is nice because different languages you might have to change the formatted print string. So by putting in this $1 token, you can control which value gets substituted in there. So we're going to go ahead and use this from the ground up. So even when we don't have to, we're going to use it just so that we're accustomed to it. And then what we can do is we can substitute values in like what's shown here. Actually, we can do it a little shorter than this even, which I'll show you here in a second. So let's go ahead and start putting in some of our string resources. I'm just going to go ahead and start typing them. We've got a message start, a message format, and a button label. With string resources, you can go either way. They're simple enough that, to be honest, I usually just copy paste one, and then I just change values, right? So I've got a message start, and it says you have pressed the button 0 times. Then the next one I'm going to do is a message format, where I stick in, so %D would work, but go ahead and put in the $1 sign to get in the habit of using this for when you do localizations. Now you may ask yourself, why on earth did I do this? Why did I do the message start thing and then the message format? Why didn't I just use the message format in code later? The reason I do the start thing is just to help me when I'm doing my layout. It helps me know how big I should make my text, whether it's too big with bold, things like that. But it is optional. I just choose to do it to help me with my layout. Then the other thing we wanted a button label. And our button is just going to say, press me. Pretty simple. And those are our string resources. So that was pretty easy. And then to make our text view use the string resource, we'll just have to change which resource it's set to. So right now, if you look at the property for the text, it's set to hello. We're just going to click on the ellipses and change it to message start. You can see it populated this field. Eclipse does a lot of nice things for you. And as soon as I do that, it pops in with the right message. And since you have this, now you can play with things if you wanted to set the size to something different. Let's say I wanted to set it to 18 SP. SP stands for Scalable Density Independent Pixels. This is important because if somebody has their, let's say an older person wanted to set their text to show up bigger, this would respect that setting. 16 SP looks better because I lost my S at 18. So you've pressed the button 0 times. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to add some more elements to our XML file. We're going to add a button, and then we're going to set some button properties. And the way we're going to set the properties, I've got some things in the slides here for how we're going to set the important properties. The text view, we're going to make its string be message start. It's going to have a set color. We're also going to set its ID. The ID is important so that we can reference it in code. And then with the button, what we're going to do is we're going to fill its parent on the width, but we're going to set margins around it. And it's also going to have a text and an ID. So let's go do those things. So I'm going to click, I clicked on the text view and I hit plus. I start typing in the word button. So I'm going to add a button. So you can see the button got added. The button got added and it put on a default text and a default ID value for you. We're going to change those. So we're going to change the text to, that's my dog Kingsley, change the text to button label. And we're going to change the ID. We could have left it as this, but I'm going to go ahead and call it my button. That'll be important when we get to code later, but may as well set it now. The other thing I wanted to do with this is I wanted to go ahead and make it take up the whole width and then have a margin around it. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to fill parent on the width. And then with the margin, you can do a couple things. You can set them individually, so I could set just the left and the right. Or if you set margin, it'll just kind of set them all. I'm going to set it to 20 dps. So that put a border of 20 density independent pixels all around it. A density independent pixel is, so for example, I use an iPhone 4 which has 326 pixels per inch, whereas other people might use an iPhone 3G or 3GS which is 160 pixels per inch. The idea is a density independent pixel, it turns out to be the same size. So both screens are 3.2 inches wide. So it's assuming it's letting you use a linear distance that doesn't care about how density rich the screen really is. So DPs, you also hear people call them dips. I guess they just kind of add a letter I for fun. DPs is kind of the recommended practice for dimensions. Whereas with text, the recommended practice is scalable density independent pixels, so SPs. And there's a bunch more, but those are really the only ones you need. Cool, so let's go ahead and set some other things here. So the text view, we'd said it was going to have an ID. The way that you type an ID is they start with @ and since we're creating this and giving it an ID, we say plus ID. That's very common to see the @ plus ID. The only times you wouldn't have a plus sign is if you're referencing it from somewhere else, so you don't have to create it, you just have to give it an ID. But most things you'll have a plus ID. I'll give it a very unoriginal name. I'll just call it my text view. So now it's got an ID. You can see it actually shows that in the outline, which is kind of neat. So we're doing pretty good. The one thing that we're missing, let's go through and make sure we have all these things down. So I think I've got those things all set. I think I've got those things all set. The thing we're missing is it's not centered vertically. So what we're going to do to center it vertically is we're going to add a second linear layout. So there's going to be 2 linear layouts. The outermost linear layout is going to be a horizontal orientation, and the inner one will be vertical. And then in order to do the centering, I'm going to choose to do the wrapping the height around the inner one and setting its layout gravity to center. So this says layout gravity says center me, so center this view within my parent. In order for that to do something, we're going to have to change this to wrap content. We'll go ahead and do it using the outline tool. So we're just going to go ahead and click plus. We'll say linear layout. And unfortunately, it's going to add it not necessarily where we want it. It's going to add it to the bottom, but that's okay. You can click on the up arrow to move it up. So now you can see that there's this linear layout, and then it's got a child, this linear layout. But you can see that the text view and the button are not children of it. But that's okay. We can click on up here. So you can see now it's a child node. And then we're going to go ahead and click up here. And we can see it became a child node as well. A few things we have to fix, obviously. This one looks like this new one got a horizontal layout, which is not what we wanted. It also got an ID, which we don't need. It did get a wrap content, which is good because we do want to wrap the content, certainly in the height. The width shouldn't matter. I'm going to say fill parent on the width. So the orientation, we're going to type in as being vertical. And when I hit enter, you can see a significant change there. The ID we don't really need, so I'm just going to delete it. And we're going to want to center it within our parent. Let's go modify the parent real quick. So the parent we're going to set up as a horizontal. Also, you'll see people sometimes put a little padding around it as well. We don't need padding this time, so it's a horizontal. And then, so if I click on this top one, you can see it takes up the whole region. This middle linear layout, you can say it's wrapped to its text, or it's wrapped to its context. And so as soon as I say layout gravity, it should snap to the middle. So layout gravity center and snap to the middle. By the way, I found gravity and layout gravity really confusing at first. One of the places that I found that made it pretty clear is there was a good description on one of the Think Android tutorials. It was written, I guess, in January earlier this year. And it's just talking about the difference between gravity and layout gravity. And I think this sentence says it really well. Gravity positions the contents of that view, so it works with only one view, whereas layout gravity works with two views. It says center my view with respect to my parent. So gravity is just, it only deals with one view itself and its content. Layout gravity works with that view and its parent. Enough harping on that. Cool. So it looks like we got things centered, and we should be good to go there. Just if you want, you can always run it and make sure it looks the same in the emulator as it does in the layout here. For simple stuff, it's pretty gosh darn reliable, right? So it shows up, looks just like we expect. You can click on the button. That's all well and good. It just doesn't do anything yet. So I suppose that's what we ought to do next. So the important thing when you go to referencing these objects is their ID value. So in the slides here, I called it my TextView. I used camel case, but I happen to know what I just typed, and I used the underscores with all lowercase. By the way, you can also see the code that got generated by the layout tool. It may format it a little crazy. You can always hit Command A, Command I, or Control A, Control I if you're on a Windows machine. And it'll try to clean it up for you some. But hopefully the stuff that's in here matches up pretty well with the slides. But you can see I used a slightly different name on the IDs. Cool. So our goal is we want clicking this button to do something. We want an OnClickListener for this guy. And we want a reference to this text view. So we're going to go do that and write a little bit of code. So the first thing we want to do is we want to capture our graphical views. So we've got a button out there. I'm just going to call it my button. And I'm going to typecast find view by ID. The ID that I'm looking for is r.id. And it brings up a little list for me. My button is obviously the one we want. Eclipse complains, and it says, I have no idea what you're talking about. What is this button class you speak of? Eclipse is, of course, really handy. You can hold down on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-O. On a Windows machine, it's Control-Shift-O. And you can see it imports the correct package. So it imports android.widget.button, and then it's happy again. The other view that we want to reference is my text view. Very similar. View by rdr.id. My text view. It says I have no idea about this class. Command-Shift-O. Fix that up. Another thing to mention here is this function find view by ID. It is a method. It's actually a method on the context. The activity is a subclass of a context. So really these are calling, this dot find view by ID. You'll find that most Android developers, I guess Java developers too, they leave off the this dot, pretty much all the time. But just kind of know that it is actually calling a method on an object because all of Java is, calling something on some object. So let's go ahead and do something just to prove that we've actually are able to make a change. So let's say my TextView, and we're going to change the text. So we're going to say dot set text. One thing that I'm still occasionally having trouble with is my Eclipse slows down at this point. I got an email from a student about how to fix it, but I haven't gone through and done it just yet. So my view.setText and we'll just do a quick little test. So I'll just change it to test. And we'll just run it just to kind of make sure that everything is happy-go-lucky. And so when it loads this time, it should change that text just to say test. Cool. And that worked just fine. So we're happy about that. Let's go ahead and make it say something for real. So instead of saying test, we'll create some message and put it in there. The message that we're going to create is we're going to use our string formatter. So you remember that we've got, oops, maybe that won't be a problem. We've got our string formatter called message format. So we're going to get this message format and we're going to put a value in here. So let's go ahead and create an instance variable, private int, we'll call it m press count. Not sure what I called it before. I'll start it off with a value, I'll tell you what, I'll start it off with a value of 5, just so I can see that something is happening. So what I need to do is I need to use that string formatter and I need to put that value into it. In order to get at your resources, you need to call get resources, and that will get your resources. Do a Command-Shift-O to bring in app.content.res.resources, and we're going to say, hey resources, get string, get me the string r.string message format. And in the slides, what I did is I got this string and then I called string.format on it. But a student in class told me that I can actually do one better. And whenever I get the string, I can actually get it, and I can go ahead and pass in the variable at this point, which is kind of slick, and it'll take care of putting it in when I get the resource back. So I thought that was nice. So when I run this now, it gets my resources. My resources get that formatter for me. I stick in a value, and then we print it out. And like I said, there's a bunch of places where I could add the word this. So this dot get resources, this dot impress count, and then I set it. So if I run this, so it's going to load it up, and it should say you've pressed the button 5 times. Cool. So it looks like things are definitely working. I'm going to set this back to 0, or I can just delete it, and that should set it back to 0. I just wanted to set it to 5 just so I knew my string formatter was actually working. Cool. So 0 times. Pressing the button still doesn't do anything. Not shocking. Let's fix that whole button doesn't do anything issue. The way we're going to fix it is we're going to set a listener for the button. I'm going to catch my slides up here. So that's setting up the layout. One thing you can see that I did in the slides here is I added the word final. So there will be a reason shortly where adding final is useful. But to be honest, all final is saying is it's saying that this this pointer isn't going to point to any other objects. It's going to point to this one object forever. And you know, my button isn't going to point to anything else, so I may as well add the word final. Nothing wrong with it. And then there's where I added the string. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add this button's OnClickListener. So let's go ahead and do that. So my button we're going to set the OnClickListener. There's a couple ways to create a listener. We could add this, and if we did that, we'd have to make the class implement the OnClickListener. We could make a named inner class, but the assumption is that people in this class have experience with Java, so we're just going to go ahead and make an anonymous inner class. Those are pretty gosh darn common and awfully handy. Read somewhere that it takes a little bit, like an extra 1K of space somehow. I'm not worried about that. So the OnClickListener is technically within View. If you just typed OnClickListener, it would have worked fine, but it's within View.OnClickListener. Eclipse is your friend. Eclipse goes ahead and adds the required method that you need. The required method that you need is called onClick, and it passes you in the view that was clicked. Very good chance that the view that's clicked here is my button. And what we're going to do is we're just going to drag this code that we had before. I'm going to do a Control-X, and I'm going to paste it right inside here, and I'll have to make a couple small changes. The couple small changes I'm going to have to add, well, first I'm going to want to increment the press count. And the next thing I need to do is, since I'm in an anonymous inner class, I can't say this dot because I'm actually inside a different class. There are two ways to fix this. One way you can fix it is kind of wacky. You can say main hello button dot this, so it uses the main hello buttons this, and that works fine. You'll rarely see that in people's code, so I could add it here as well. But that is how the system works. If you want to be very explicit, what you'll typically see is they'll just, if you just drop the word this, that works just fine as well. So take your pick. The one thing that I do have to do though is here you'll notice that I'm making reference to my TextView, and if I were to take off the word final, it would complain about that. And you can say change modifier to final. So it was actually a good thing I did that before. Cool, so at this point we should have a button which does something. Let's go ahead and run it. And now when we click on our button, it should change this to one time. Obviously I could change my S and get it all worked out, but I'm not worried about it. Press the button 2 times, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, many times. Cool. So this app, this little simple app, we've basically done what we wanted to do. I am going to show you one more thing, well, two more things that are just kind of fun and interesting. The first thing that I'm going to show you, we'll show you the most trivial first, is it's fairly easy to change the icon. So let's just go ahead and play with that. So right now it got the default icon, which is fine. If you wanted to change this icon, it's pretty easy to do. In the slides, you can see that we've got a reference to a red image button. If you click on that in the slides, or if you click on it, and the home page also has one, you can download this button. There's a bunch of ways to bring it into the project. Probably one of the easiest is you can actually just drag it and drop it into your drawable area. I'm going to say copy, yes. And you can see now I've got that resource. So it's a pretty easy way to bring things in. To set that as your icon, that's in the Android manifest file. So previously it's using the drawable icon. I want you to use red button. Cool. And so I run it again, and you can see even before it launched, I could see that it changed the icon to simple button. So our simple button app now has a simple button icon. Icons, This is just a 48 pixel by 48 pixel icon. Very simple little icon. Just something I grabbed off the web. Cool. The other thing I want to show you is I want to show you log messages. So log messages are very important. They are your friends. This app doesn't need log messages because, you know, when you hit the button you can see it on the screen. But log messages are very important, so I thought we'd best show them to you right off the go. To create a log message with Android, you type log dot, and then you say what type of log message is it. The log message that I use the most is log.d. It stands for debug. And log messages actually receive two strings. So the first string is what's called the tag. And so you want to always add a tag because the log cat gets very, very big. And then the next one is the message that you're actually going to log. Different people have different approaches on the tags. I take kind of a lazy approach. My approach is, well, really the best way to do it is to create a static final string usually they're just called like tag. And you can just call it whatever you want. I'll call mine main hello button. You could also make it, you know, a string resource if you wanted. Once a semicolon up here. Or you can get lazy. Sometimes instead of typing the whole thing, you'll see me type just the initials, MHB. That'll get the job done. And then log a button click. And you could log even more if you wanted. You could also log, you know, like press equals press count. You know, just typical. Java is really nice too. If you add a string plus an integer, it'll do all the conversion for you. So if we add that, oops, what's an I in the word private? I was expecting it to say I didn't know what logs were, and I was going to have to add it, but it looks like it added itself. By the way, this is kind of funny. There's a bunch of different log types. There's log D for debug, log W for warning, log, I think there's an F for failure. There's also one that's kind of funny. This is real. Log.WTF. It stands for what a terrible failure. WTF log only came about in Android 2.2, so since I'm using the 1.5 SDK, I can't use 2.2. I thought about starting this app with 2.2 just so I could use the WTF log message. Alright, so we've typed this thing in here. I want to see it when it runs. In order to view the log, you're going to have to open up the log window. So the log window doesn't show up in the initial list, so you're going to have to say other, so show view other. But inside the Android area, if you expand it, you can see the log cat is right here. So immediately you can see that the log is quite large. I'm going to delete this filter just because I want to show you making a filter. And you can see that the log is kept for a long time. And it gets big. So this is why we have this tag approach. So I'm going to add a new filter. So I'm going to click on this green button. The filter I'm going to create is just going to be called MHB for main hello button. The name doesn't really matter, but the tag does. So I want to filter for MHB tag messages. So MHB, I say OK. All of a sudden it shows me only the MHB log messages. I'm going to go and clear it off. And so now when I run it, I had stuff because I've run this before, right? And now when I run it, when I click the button, it'll change stuff on the screen, and it'll also add logs. So when I click it, it says log a button press equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously in this example it says it right on the screen. We didn't need the log messages, but it's important that you learn how to use the log because the log is your friend. Let me just make that perfectly clear. The log is your friend. Cool. So we took our time. We went through this example. This was assumed your first actual like Android app where you wrote some code. We got to go through. We got to make a new project. We got to make some resources, some string resources, some color resources. We got to work a lot with the main.xml, those outline and property views. Learning about the properties of all the different views, it's important, but you don't need to like sit down and learn them all. You can just kind of learn them as you go. Playing with linear layouts, that was the mechanism we chose to do to center it. There are a few ways to center things. You could also use a frame layout and do some centering there. Just a couple examples I saw did this, horizontal and vertical linear layout. So it's the approach I've been using. Then we referenced some objects in code. We created an OnClickListener, and then we changed the property of this TextView programmatically. So that's it for our first example together. In class, we finished up this one midway through, and we started on tic-tac-toe in class. We didn't finish it, so I'm just going to make that one a separate video that I'll do for next time. Cool. Also in class, we handed out Lab 1. You're welcome to go start playing with Lab 1. Lab 1 is called Linear Lights Out. What I have you doing in Lab 1 is I've got you filling out or doing a Google tutorial, which I think is really good, called Form Stuff. And then there's a problem that we'll work on together in the next class. You can see I didn't even change it. It still says iPhone. I'll fix that to say Android. Cool. So that's all we got for this time. I will see you next time where we're going to make a tic-tac-toe app. See you then.